My name is Matt Reed, and I own Bee Thinking, where we're standing right now in Portland, Oregon. I got the bee fever, I guess you could call it, in 2008. I was living in an apartment just a couple blocks up the street here in southeast Portland, and I walked into my kitchen and I noticed a honeybee on the windowsill who was still alive but was clearly struggling. And so I'm the guy that saves all the unlovable creatures, the bugs, the spiders of the world, and I decided to save this honeybee. And so I knew that honeybees ate honey, they stung, they lived in colonies, and that's about all I knew about them. And so I got some honey, I warmed up a plate, I put the bee onto the plate because I figured they're basically cold-blooded creatures. And then I watched as she ran for the honey and started drinking, and then I took her out to the front porch and she flew away. And I thought that was awesome. I ran inside and told my wife. She thought I was crazy. And then later she was leaving for work and there were a bunch of bees trying to get into our apartment. That one, of course, she communicated about this food source and more bees came back. And then about a month later I had my first beehive, and then I began building beehives for myself and making a blog about it, and then people started emailing to buy them. And so that's how Bee Thinking was born. So now I have about 50 hives throughout southeast Portland, top bar hives, Oreo hives, Langstroth hives. I keep those. I also sell bees here in town, do swarm removal. I also travel around speaking about these type of hives a lot. So our business, when we started in 2008, I didn't know how we were going to make money. I assumed, like most people that get into beekeeping, if they wanted to be a business, that they'd sell honey. I thought I'd sell honey and that's how I would make a living, or at least pay for my beekeeping addiction. And then I learned that it's not that easy. They don't always produce honey, and if they do, it may not be very much, and it costs you a lot of money to get it into jars and market it. And so it was really organically that it turned into a beekeeping supply business. Building cedar beehives became, it made a lot more sense than selling honey. And we sell it. It's right behind you on that table right now, and it's good. But I think there's a huge demand for hives in this country, and we ship all over the world. So there's beekeepers everywhere looking for a really nice beehive to put their bees in. And we've doubled, at least doubled, every year since we started. In 2008, we grew from our garage to a very tiny garage-like space in Sellwood, the Sellwood neighborhood of Portland. And now we have a space 3 times that size in southeast off of Hawthorne. So it's continually growing, and it doesn't seem to be slowing down in any way. Yeah, so we build top bar hives, Oreo hives, and Langstroth hives here in Portland. We build them all from western red cedar. Our goal is to make the nicest hives around for backyard beekeepers. So our focus isn't commercial folks that are moving their hives everywhere, but people that want 1 or 2 really nice hives. That's both good for them, but also for the bees. And we use the same hives that we sell in our own apiary of about 50 hives. Ours are older and uglier, but they work just the same. The bees never complain about them. And so we offer windows in at least 2 of our hives, which I think is really fun, but it's also helpful to be able to check on what's going on in your hive without having to disturb them. And if you look at all the new books that have been coming out about beekeeping, the media attention, I think, has been helpful. Gunther Hawk, a very famous beekeeper, mentioned that the loss of the honeybees, the colony collapse disorder thing, is actually a good thing for bees because it's making people aware of their importance in our daily lives. Whether you keep bees or not, you are impacted by them, what you eat, and many other things that you do. Without bees, you wouldn't have the same life that you live today. So I think all of that has been a very important factor in our success as a business. And most of our customers are backyard beekeepers with 1 or 2 hives, many of them on balconies or tiny plots of land in LA or in New York City or everywhere in between. They're not doing this commercially, they're not doing this to make money. Most of them got into it because they wanted to help the honeybees somehow. And when it comes to education, that has been a difficulty for some of them because they're in rural areas and there's not a lot of resources for them, especially if they're using an alternative beehive. If they're not using a Langstroth hive, it can be very hard because you're alone. And some places are not very open to alternatives, like Portland is. In our beekeeping association, probably 1/3 of the people in the group to maybe 1/2 are not using Langstroth hives, which is pretty amazing to me. When I travel the country, that's far rarer to encounter someone who does not use standard equipment. Portland has a thriving beekeeping community in general, and then there's also lot of beekeepers on very small properties, rooftops, balconies, things like that, keeping their bees. There's an awesome group in town, Portland Urban Beekeepers, which is pretty much entirely treatment-free, focused on giving bees good homes to live in. And so I think it's really a great place to be a beekeeper. There's a lot of flowers, there's a lot of backyard gardening, organic gardening, and the bees have a lot of forage available to them throughout the season. And so I think Portlanders are also more aware of the importance of honeybees. It seems about every other person that comes in our store already has chickens, and sometimes I can tell they look like chicken people. And I'll even ask them, do you have chickens? And say, yeah, next I'm getting bees. And then everyone seems to go get goats. So Portland's a great spot for any sort of urban homesteading.